Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1064 just came out, and this chapter was a fantastic follow-up to last week's cliffhanger between Law and Blackbeard. A lot of us were worried that Oda was going to cut away and that we weren't going to get to see that part anymore, but Oda doesn't do that now. Nowadays, Oda actually shows us glimpses of these clashes, so we got to see Blackbeard versus Boa Hancock a little bit ago, Blackbeard versus the Seraphim a little bit ago. I think that this is going to be a trend where now whenever we're cutting away to these outside world fights, we are actually going to get to see bits and pieces of them. Reason being, for the longest time, I think Oda wanted to keep the tippy top tier of combat in the One Piece world a bit more mysterious, a little more rare, just so that it's more exciting whenever we get glimpses of it. So that's why we don't get to see things like Akainu versus Aokiji, or Marco versus Blackbeard during the Payback War. But we're at a point in the story where it's like, we've seen Yonko level characters fighting. We've seen them fighting for a while now. There's no longer any reason really to hide clashes like Law versus Blackbeard, right? At the end of the day, Oda is just trying to move the plot along, but he still wants to make it exciting for us, right? Whatever plot point is going to come out of this, be that Law being captured, someone else intervening and, Law getting away, Oda still wants to show us a little bit of what a fight between Law and Blackbeard and really the Heart Pirates versus the Blackbeard Pirates looks like. And I do have to put some more respect on the Heart Pirates name. I will get to that in a second. The first thing that really stood out to me about this chapter, though, is the most bizarre thing I've ever... I don't know why this was so strange to me, but seeing Van Augur in the cover story, when Van Augur is simultaneously fighting against the Heart Pirates, that threw me for a loop, because that is the first time that something like that has ever happened in the entirety of One Piece. We've had dozens and dozens of cover stories at this point. Not once have we ever had a simultaneous plotline happening with the cover story featuring a character that is in action in the main plot at the same time. Because up till now, whatever time frame a cover story is happening, right, it's been left vague or up to interpretation in what relation that is to the storyline of what's actually happening in the main chapters, right? We don't ever know, okay, how far back was this cover story taking place? Is this happening simultaneously, right? Is this all synced up? This was the first cover story where I think we got it confirmed that what we were watching is definitely sometime in the past, right? Not recent at all. We don't know when the Blackbeard Pirates picked up Pudding. For all we know, it could have been before Blackbeard's raid on Amazon Lily. That's entirely possible, which is very interesting because maybe Pudding was captive before Koby was, although I don't know, it doesn't really matter too much what the timeline was for those events, but that's just it's just crazy to me that like we get this far into this series, we've got thousands and thousands of chapters, and you're still kind of learning new things, right? We're still learning that, okay, the cover stories don't necessarily have to be taking place at the same time as the main story. This is still a first. In a series this long, this is still a first that we got Van Augur and Pudding in the cover story and Van Augur and Pudding in the actual main chapter. So that was just very interesting to me for whatever reason. That aside, the fight between the Law Pirates and the Blackbeard Pirates, I think Oda did this about as well as he could, because as we all know, the Heart Pirates are severely outmatched. But I actually really appreciated Oda pulling out something very logical and very simple when you think about it, which is that the Heart Pirates are traveling around with a submarine. A submarine is objectively better in naval combat by far than ships. That's why we invented the damn things, right? So it just makes so much sense that if the Heart Pirates were to specialize in some form of combat, it may not necessarily be on land, but they have got the leg up on anybody in a naval battle. And considering this is a world of pirates where, in theory, the majority of everything should be taking place on the ocean, even though it doesn't in actuality, but in theory, that means the Heart Pirates are an extremely dangerous crew. Because their submarine, it has a significant advantage in a naval battle against anyone that they go up against. In fact, I would go so far as to say that the Blackbeard Pirates are lucky that they ended up fighting the Heart Pirates so close to a physical island. Because if this was just out in open water, what are they gonna do? It's actually very difficult for them to deal with a submarine. So I like that the Heart Pirates fighting style revolves around that. Underwater combat, naval combat, Shachi and Penguin actually being able to do things because, water is their specialty. I like that aspect of the Heart Pirates. It kind of excuses them in a sense for being so terrible during the Onigashima battle fighting. I don't know what they did, to be honest. I don't know what they did. And if we're really tallying things up, the last I saw of Jean Bart, he was getting beat up by a random mink at Zou, one of Pedro's subordinates, not even like one of the leaders really of the, one of the top brass of the Mink tribe. Just some random Mink was beating him up. That's the last I remember of Jean Bart. So how he's blocking Van Augur's bullets, I can only assume he took significant damage or something like that. It doesn't really matter, but let's just assume that the Heart Pirates, either they've improved or they were not as sorry as we all thought this entire time. But I like the angle that Oda's going with what they specialize in, because it's a justifiable way to explain why they haven't been as useful when we've seen them fighting so far. But what they're good at has been in front of our eyes this entire time, which is aquatic battles. And they've got a ship and everything like that to match. I like it. So I think that's probably the best we're going to see out of the Heart Pirates. I would love to see Beppo get one shining moment in some fashion. Otherwise, he's kind of just the mascot of the crew. That would be nice to see. But that aside, let's talk Law and Blackbeard. So I think that I tend to underrate Law in general, because as far as I can tell, he has extremely, out of all of the strong characters in the story, Law is by far the most reliant on his Devil Fruit and has by far the worst haki out of any of the strong characters in the story. So I'm talking, higher level characters, right? I don't want to get into exact tiers that I'm referring to here, but just assume like, upper tier character like Katakuris, etc. and up, all right? Let's just say that. So I'm a little harsh on Law in general, but this chapter, for the first time, without any sort of assistance, not playing a support role or whatever, it's not a 2v1 or whatever, I saw Law go up against a Yonko and not look bad. He got a really good hit in on Blackbeard. Granted, it's Blackbeard, and I think you could throw a Girl Scout at Blackbeard and he would probably get a sucker punch to start the fight. That's just been his thing throughout the story. Doesn't matter who he goes up against. Ace, Magellan, Whitebeard, the Seraphim, Mihawk or whatever. He's just always thrown off by whoever shows up in front of him. He comes in very confident, and whatever's happening, Sengoku, it doesn't matter, right? These are all strong characters, granted, but I'm just saying I've never seen Blackbeard show up somewhere and not immediately get smacked in the face by whatever, something that he should have been ready for, but he just gets smacked in the face anyway. It just happens. That's his thing, right? That being said, still impressive that Law got in a really good hit on him to start their little match. And then following up on that, we saw that Law's Awakening can actually clash with the Guru Guru no Mi, which is a really, really big deal. Granted, Law is a very, very powerful broken fruit, the most broken fruit in the series, as I've been saying, so take that as you will, but it is still very impressive, and no matter how much I try, I can't actually underplay that. Blackbeard is probably going to win the match due to the fact that Blackbeard is broken and has a second really, really, really good Devil Fruit. That's just Blackbeard's thing, right? He's going to have all the strongest Devil Fruits. If I'm talking about anyone being carried by Devil Fruits, that's kind of Blackbeard's shtick, right? He wants all the strongest Devil Fruits. He wants all the advantages. He wants all the shortcuts. He wants all the cheat codes. He wants all the hacks. That's his thing. That's the persona. That's the type of villain that he's being built up to be. So obviously, at the end of the day, no matter how good Law's fruit is, it can't compete with the Yami Yami no Mi, because the Yami Yami no Mi cancels out all fruits. So ultimately, I do think that Law's gonna lose this, but this was a very, very impressive showing no matter how you spin it, right? So I enjoyed the match. I enjoyed the fact that Oda's not hiding this sort of stuff from us anymore. I don't know, maybe if we're very, very, very lucky, then we get to see a bit more of it, but I would personally not be surprised if the next time we're seeing Law is basically in chains. Now, one thing to discuss is basically, would Blackbeard kill Law for his fruit? I've seen some people talking about that. I think no, because with Law's fruit, what you really want is you want the user to sacrifice themselves, right, to perform the immortality surgery. That's what you really want out of Law's fruit. I don't see any reason why Blackbeard would kill Law. Then what would he do with the fruit? He would have to give it to one of his crew members, make that crew member eat the fruit, then the crew member would have to sacrifice themselves to give Blackbeard immortality. Reality is, whoever has the fruit right now, it's an enemy of Blackbeard's, it's Law, right? That's the ideal person to have the fruit, because Blackbeard would want someone that's not exactly on his crew. He would want an outside third party, aka Law, to be the one to sacrifice themselves to give him immortality, right? So my personal take on it is that the Poneglyphs, yes, Blackbeard will definitely take that. He has no real reason, even if he captures Law, he has no real reason to kill Law for the fruit, because what he would want would be through torture, negotiation, force, threatening the lives of his subordinates or whatever. He would want to in some way ultimately try and force Law as his captive to basically ultimately give his life up, sacrifice himself, perform the immortality surgery. That's the ultimate goal, right? The fruit's already in the ideal hands of who Blackbeard would want to have the fruit. a third party that he is perfectly fine killing off. There's no reason for him to kill Law, take the fruit, give it to somebody else, because it's just overcomplicating things, right? At the end of the day, the fruit person, the fruit user needs to sacrifice themselves to give him immortality. You guys get where I'm going. I think Law's being taken captive here, right? What I also really liked out of this chapter, sorry, I'm a little over the place, but I do think Kobe being captive, Pudding being captive, Law being captive, these things are going to line up in some way. I think that's very interesting. I think that the interactions we could get out of this group would be really good. I really like Pudding this chapter. This was a very, very, very poised, calm. I think the panel that we got out of Pudding was very impressive. I don't think I remembered this Pudding in Whole Cake Island. I don't remember her being this certain, this unfazed. This is a new Pudding that I think we're seeing. And I think I really, really appreciate the fact that you could call it character growth or something like that, or at least showing a steely sort of resolve that we haven't gotten to see before, a greater depth to the character. But I really, really like the panel of Pudding. Whether Big Mom is alive or not, it's not really relevant to this situation, I suppose. Maybe she is, but even if Big Mom is alive, what's she gonna come back and do, right? Her whole empire has been taken down at this point. I mean, people have been walking in and out. Germa, Caesar, Blackbeard pirates, Aokiji, it's open season on the Big Mom pirates. She would come back to an empire in shambles, essentially. Her prized possession Pudding is gone. Who knows what the deal is with Big Mom, but let's assume she's dead for now. That's easiest for me in my book. So, like Pudding stuff, like Law, like Blackbeard, all like the Heart Pirates, everything like that. What I really, really, really love is Egghead Island in general, though. I love this place. This is one of my favorite, this chapter became one of my favorite locations, period. It's giving me Skypiea vibes again, obviously because of the clouds and everything like that. But it's got the new twist on it, which is that it's all about futuristic technology, futuristic city, advanced tech. I love that, right? It feels like Skypiea 2.0 in a sense. I love the design. I love that we've got tiers to kind of the setup of the island. You've got Luffy and them running around downstairs, but then you've got the higher strata of, you know, the actual advanced stuff going on at top. I love this location. This is probably hold on, let me think for a second. Is this my favorite location? It's too early to tell if it's my favorite location. I really liked Whole Cake in the New World. I really liked Whole Cake Island when we first visited it. I was actually one of the people that loved the Seducing Woods. Most people hated the Seducing Woods. I thought the Seducing Woods were great. I love the chapters where they're actually just running around where it was Candyland and everything like that. This gives me those vibes with the Strides experimenting with Vegapunk's technology, everything like that, the laboratory, just kids in a candy store, right? I don't know if I'd say Egghead Island's my favorite location just yet, I suppose, in the New World, but it's definitely up there. So this chapter felt like, I think every scene so far on Egghead Island has felt like a breath of fresh air. It's just fun seeing the crew having fun, right? It's fun seeing the characters you like enjoying themselves and getting to explore a little bit. Feels like there's a lot of adventure and sense of mystique going on here. And Oda's really playing up the mysteries this chapter. So, story behind Kuma and Bonnie. Again, I'm going to shout out the previous video because I do think I have some good ideas on what that could have been, because the question that Bonnie raises this chapter is exactly what I addressed in that last video about Kuma and Bonnie, which is, why did Kuma agree to become a slave to the world government? Why did he allow them to erase his mind? I think that the answer is fairly straightforward. I would strongly recommend going back, checking out the most recent video, but obviously that's my video, so I'm going to shout it out anyway, but I think that it's very, very pertinent here. So there's that, and then Oda ends with a little cliffhanger about Dragon. I feel like Vegapunk is very clearly being painted out to be a tragic figure. I'm not going to believe that Vegapunk's actually going to die or anything like that till... I think I've been burned too many times from Wano of characters such as a Kinemon, etc., basically saying they're going to die, this is their end, and then nothing actually coming of it. But it would be a really, really strong dramatic beat, especially for the start of the final saga of One Piece. If we meet Vegapunk, there's some sort of tragic storyline attached, potentially tied to Kuma and Bonnie, even to Dragon, and maybe we learn more history about Luffy and his family and his, you know, where he came from, etc. And that ends with the death of Vegapunk. That would be great, but I'm not going to assume that anything like that is going to take place. But all in all, I love this chapter. Great, great, great chapter to, you know, end this series of last 3 chapters on, and we got a break week next week. So I will talk to you all later.